Oh my goodness. Wow. I am quite frankly blown away by the massive amount of support that my latest video all about One Piece has gotten. I had no idea how much traction that was gonna get. That is far more than I thought it would. So I just wanted to film a little insert before this video just to say, my goodness, thank you all so much for watching that video, for finding me through it, for leaving all those nice comments. I am flabbergasted. My flabber, it is gasted. Thank you doesn't quite feel like enough, but I am incredibly grateful to all of you who have shown support for that video, especially those of you who've left nice comments, those of you who have subscribed to see what I've got coming out next. I just wanted to say a massive thank you. I'm very appreciative of all of that. It's been like a little early Christmas present. Thank you so much. I'm going to thank you again in the actual video that I've already recorded. But even since I recorded the video you're about to watch, it's still taken off so much more than I had expected. It's in the stratosphere now. There's no stopping it. So yeah, I just wanted to say a big thank you before we get into the video proper. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of what I have to offer here, and I hope you enjoy the video that you're about to watch. Back over to me in the past, in the video that I've already done. Back over to that guy. It is not my intention to become from here on out a full-on exclusive One Piece channel. That being said, this video is about One Piece as well. As I mentioned in the previous videos, there's gonna be a few more One Piece related things coming up. There's more things that I've got to say about One Piece. There's more yapping that I've got to do. By the way, thank you very much for the reception on that video. I've had a lot of people already commenting and liking and saying very nice complimentary things, which makes me feel very good. Thank you for the overwhelmingly positive response on that. Welcome if you're new from that video. Welcome to this nonsense. Speaking of yapping, enough yapping.
Alright, enough of this gooey show of emotion.
This is going to be a bit more of a casual video. This video I am going to be ranking on a tier list the various different One Piece sagas. Not every individual arc, but the overarching sagas that all the arcs comprise of. Those being East Blue, Alabasta, Skypiea, Water 7, Thriller Bark, Summit War, Fishman Island, Dressrosa, Whole Cake Island, Wano, and Egghead. I am omitting Elbaf for now because it is literally only just started. We feel very much still in the opening setup stages of it, so it feels like it'd be a weird one to rank before it's complete. So we're ranking everything up to Egghead as a matter of course. There will be spoilers up to Egghead, so if you're not caught up, bear that in mind. So let's just get into it. I'm going to go through these in chronological order. So let's begin with the East Blue. Feels like a hard one to rank straight off the bat because so much more so than any of the others, it feels like it's not so much one big saga, but it's got a lot of little sagas within it. You know, you've got Syrup Village, Orange Town, and all of that. It has the big climax of Arlong Park, but it's not like it's all building up to Arlong. It's just, we get there when we get there. So it feels more like a lot of mini arcs in one big arc. More so than some of the others that have a bit more of a consistent through line, where we know what we're building up towards. And again, it's very early. I feel like there are a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of teething issues in the start of any series. There's going to be teething issues in the early stages, but there's also a lot of very iconic moments. Arlong Park in particular, the foot on the barrel scene before they head into the Grand Line, Zoro versus Mihawk, Sanji's introduction, all that stuff. So I think I'm going to leave it in a... No, I think might have to put it in A actually. No, I'm going to leave it in B for now, and then when I finish this tier list, I'm going to go back and see if I want to move around anything. A lot of good stuff in East Blue, but there's some slow stuff too. There's like Don Krieg, for example, who I was very surprised when I watched the anime after watching the live action that Don Krieg was like any kind of character. And I do think, compared to like everything else going on in the Baratie arc, that is by far the least interesting. You know, Zoro versus Mihawk and Sanji's backstory and joining the crew, all of that is so much more compelling than anything that Don Krieg has to offer. I can see why they basically reduced his role to nothing in the live action, but there's enough good stuff in East Blue to keep it on the top half here. Alabasta now. That's going straight into... Ooh, it's either A or S. A lot of great stuff in Alabasta. This is comprising everything from Reverse Mountain to the end of the Alabasta arc. So this is including like Drum Island, Little Garden, all of that good stuff. Chopper's introduction Wow, fantastic arc inside of this saga. Mr. 2's Bon Clay's introduction and various other members of Baroque works, but for obvious reasons, Bon Clay is the one who stands out the most. This is also the start of where we get Sanji doing his Mr. Prince shenanigans. We haven't seen a lot of subterfuge Sanji for a long time. I feel like we're due a little bit of spy shenanigans from Sanji, maybe at some point in the current run. But yeah, I really enjoy the way that he is kind of the MVP, honestly, of Alabasta Saga. Without him, like, just trolling Crocodile on the phones, you know, they would have been captured. He and Chopper really came in clutch. You've got Vivi and that wonderful moment at the end where they all raise their hands in the air to show the symbol, the declaration of friendship. Really great saga, really great fulfillment of the promise that the Grand Line is going to be so much more threatening than what we've got so far. Crocodile is such a great villain. Still, to this day, one of the best villains in the entirety of One Piece, in the whole thing. I think the only reason I'm not going to bump it up to S is because of certain arcs that are going to come later. You know, I want to be discerning with what actually makes it into S tier. So Alabasta is certainly no lower than A tier. Fantastic arc. We're moving on to Skypiea now. Sky Island. Now, controversial one. A lot of people don't like Skypiea, or I think it's weak sauce. I can see where they're coming from. There are definitely moments in the Skypiea saga that drag. Like when they're fighting the ball guy, particularly when Luffy is trapped in that snake for like a couple episodes. I think there's some pacing issues. Whether that's the arc in general or that is Toei animation specifically. Talking of pacing issues, there's an arc coming up later where we're going to have to talk about that a bit more. I also think Enel or Eneru, depending on which subtitles you got. I got Eneru, but it seems like Enel is the more common one. I think he's a great villain. He's really imposing, he's very strong and intimidating. I in particular love how he sits so outside of the general established power dynamics in the One Piece world. Like there's in-world power scaling with like you've got rookie pirates, and then you've got the warlords, you've got the four emperors, you've got the admirals and the vice admirals. However, Enel sits completely outside of that. He's got nothing to do with warlords or emperors or anything like that. So I like that there's no direct comparison for him to like some of the villains that we see later on, for example. There's still up in the air, excuse the pun, as to like how he would stack up compared to those guys. My SD card just filled up a second ago. I've got no idea when, but my camera stopped recording. But basically, I think Skypiea is going in C. Underrated arc, I think. A lot of people say that you can skip Skypiea. I don't agree with that. But I can see why people don't like it as much as some of the others. But still, there's a lot of good stuff in there. In particular, stuff that sets up the next arc. Like, we get to see Robin just hanging out with the crew and having a little adventure, which is great, and we get to see the Merry deteriorating, which is obviously very important for what we have next, which is Water 7. Unquestionable. Yeah, I have a lot to say about Water 7. I'm going to try and keep a lid on it in this video, but so much great stuff. The interpersonal fallout between Luffy and Usopp, the introduction of the Galila company and all those guys, and crucially the backstory of Nico Robin, what she's been through and why. I really like how we begin this arc and there's so much happening. There's Luffy and Usopp falling out over the Merry. We know that the Merry is beyond like repair at this point. I mean, the last thing she did was literally fall out of the sky. She'd been through it, but hearing, you know, the professional shipwrights actually say that there's no hope and that you need a new ship, very emotional. And then you've got the whole like Frankie family attacking Usopp losing the treasure and feeling so bad about himself, and then trying to like go out on his own and get the money back and all of that. And then you've got Iceberg and the assassination attempt in CP9, and there's all these things just converge and it becomes this like, oh, holy shit, we have got a lot to resolve in this arc. All we went in here to do was like get a repair on our ship and get a new shipwright and sail off. But then a lot of other stuff begins to take over. But yeah, so Water 7 gets an S tier easily for the just alone for the moment when they're doing that face-off and they're trying to get Robin back. Say you want to live that whole scene. Robin's backstory, absolutely devastating. It made me feel the most pain, therefore it's going in S tier. But I think this is a pretty common opinion. I don't think anyone's going to balk at me putting the Water 7 saga in S tier. So let's move on to Thriller Bark. This is interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff in Thriller Bark. I like how, again, it kind of sits outside of everything. It's got its own thing going on, a bit like Skypiea had. It's got its own little, horror movie, spooky island genre going on it. There is some stuff I don't like about Thriller Bark as well. I think the pacing gets a little rough in some parts of Thriller Bark. Again, I don't know if that is true for the manga, but certainly in the Toei version. I think my least favourite thing about Thriller Bark is how sidelined Nami gets for quite a large chunk of it, and how just horrible Absalom is. Ugh. He initially appears and he's this invisible guy. He's got this weird silhouette, and you think, oh, maybe this guy's going to be like a cool sinister villain, and then he's just like a complete pervert, and that's really all there is to his character. So I really don't like Absalom. He's one of my least favourite characters in the series. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad he died unceremoniously off screen. Things I do like, I think Gecko Moria has a really interesting power set, even if he's not the most well-remembered of all the villains. The whole shadow thing is pretty cool. He actually did a lot of damage as well. He very nearly got them in the end. All he had to do was wait for sunrise, and he would have had them. He's done a lot of damage, globally, because we see all those little montages of when they defeat him, and people all around the world get their shadows back and can walk in the sun for the first time in years. It's a really beautiful moment when they defeat him. That's good stuff. But in terms of the really good stuff, Usopp versus Perona is up there as some of the best stuff in the whole shebang. Usopp being able to defeat Perona's gimmick because she can't make him depressed because he's already too depressed. Oh man, I love Usopp versus Perona. I love Perona as a character. I love Usopp's outfit in this arc. That's one of the best things about this arc. And of course, the introduction of Kuma at the end, when he first shows up, is just like, whoa, okay, we thought we had a big deal on our hands with just another warlord being the problem here, and now there's another warlord. There's two warlords on this island, and this one warlord's got an entire Buster Call just in his pocket. Kuma, very intimidating. You have that moment of hope, you defeat Moria and everyone gets the shadow back, and there's this on the cusp of celebration, and then Kuma shows up, and it's like, oh no, we thought we had it, but we did not have it. Brook, oh my god, how have I not mentioned Brook yet? Brook is amazing, in particular in this arc. What a great addition to the crew. So some really good stuff in Thriller Bark. Brook's backstory with Laboon, that scene where you see him playing Binks Sake with his crew and they're all dying one by one. That's just, oh man, that is heartbreaking, which as per the parameters I've established, does move it higher up the list. But there's some weird pacing going on, and Nami is barely in it until about halfway through, and Absalom is just a creep, so that knocks it down, and so I think that kind of balances out to a B tier bark. Moving on to the Summit War saga. So this is comprising everything from the end of Thriller Bark up to the post-war arc. So this is Duval, Shabandi Archipelago, Amazon Lily, Impel Down, Marineford, post-war, all rolled into one, and I mean, come on, this is peak. This is one peak right here. There's no way this is anywhere other than S tier. There's just so much. Impel Down, the race against time of it all, the return of old villains like Buggy and Baroque Works and Crocodile now working alongside Luffy, the introduction of Ivankov, the return of Bon Clay, so much great stuff there. On Shabandi alone, we've got the introduction of the worst generation and Trafalgar Law, Luffy punching Charlos. That's one of the best moments in the entire show. It's this weird mix of it. It's so satisfying because Charlos deserves that punch so much, and Luffy punches him so hard that the colour leaves the screen. But also, at the same time, that's gonna cause problems, and it very much does. And you have Kizaru showing up, and the rest of the pacifistas, and Kuma as well, and you get the devastating moment where all of the Straw Hats get wiped one by one by Kuma, which we know now he was doing them a favour, but at the time it is very heartbreaking seeing the Straw Hats lose for the first time, seeing Luffy break down as he realises this is the first fight that he can't win with determination alone, seeing all of his crew members disappear one by one before his eyes. It is devastating to see Luffy, who is usually so cheerful, like realize that and realize how overmatched they are, how overpowered they are. Just that alone is amazing, and then you've got the whole of Marineford. You've got the actual war. It's you've got Whitebeard, you've got Blackbeard, you've got everyone falling from the sky. The desperate struggle to save Ace and the ultimate failure. Not really failure, because they do save Ace from the execution block, and then Ace sacrifices himself to save Luffy, so it's debatable as to how successful the mission was, but yeah, seeing all of that struggle, all of that determination come ultimately to nothing and or on the surface, seem like it's come to nothing, but of course it wasn't for nothing. It was worth it in the end, because Ace got to see just how loved he was, just how worthwhile his life was. Like, his last words before leaving this mortal coil are, "Thank you for loving me." That is heartbreakingly beautiful. And Luffy, we know that Luffy wouldn't have been able to live with himself if he hadn't at least tried. He tried and he failed, but he tried, and that is what matters. There's a quote, I forget where it's from, but it's, we don't like heroes because they succeed. We like heroes because they try. Not that Luffy's a hero, of course. He'll remind us of that quite strongly in the next arc, which is Fishman Island. Now, said Skypiea was a controversial one. Fishman Island, even more so. Before I delve into why, there's a lot of really good stuff in Fishman Island, particularly thematically. The backstory with Fisher Tiger and young Jinbei and Arlong, and seeing just how like fraught the relationship with the fishmen and the humans are, and how every time you think there's a glimmer of hope, like building peace, building a bridge, something comes along and just slams into that bridge that's being built. The exploration of race relations and prejudice, and how it can like seep into societies like a poison, and how Hody Jones has no like personal relationship to the fraught relations between humans and fishmen. It's just he's a product of the society in which he was raised, and these beliefs have sunk so deeply into him that he's become this force for them, even though he has no personal stakes in this ideology. I like how representative he is of like a hollow ideal. His strength is hollow. It's coming from the drugs that he's taking, and that is of course reflective of him being a hollow character. There's no substance to him, which works really well thematically, but in terms of the entertainment value, it does make him somewhat of a lackluster villain in terms of someone that we want to see like Luffy triumph over. We get Jinbei's unofficial entrance to the crew at the end of Fishman Island, which is great. Always good to see more of Jinbei. So that's what's good about Fishman Island. Unfortunately, there is there's some notable bad stuff that is primarily going on in the Sanji corner of all of this. The Sanji perv gag just gets out of control here, and I don't like it. Like, I don't mind the Sanji simping gags, like, you know, when he's fighting Bon Clay in Alabasta, and all Bon Clay has to do is turn into Nami, and that just completely knocks Sanji back. That's all stuff. That's funny. Fishman Island is where it becomes not funny anymore. It gets overdone. It overstays its welcome. Like to the point that it becomes a plot point. I think there were better ways to introduce the blood donor situation than Sanji needing a blood donor because he's getting too many nosebleeds from getting turned on by mermaids. Sanji, I think, is one of my, like, in big picture, one of my favourite characters in the whole show, and Fishman Island does him dirty. I think I do have an E tier down here, and I don't know if I'm going to use it. I think for the moment I'm going to put Fishman Island in D, because while I really don't like the Sanji situation, as well, it's coming off the back of his stay on Ivankov's island, and that's a whole can of worms. And then every time that we see him in Fishman Island, and Return to Shibondi, it's just a reminder of that, and it just kind of leaves a bad taste. Return to Shibondi is part of this as well, which is, I think it's a pretty fun arc. The fake Straw Hats. It's a good little light-hearted, low-stakes introduction to this new next half of the series. But yes, no, the focus on this arc is on this saga is what's going on Fishman Island. The themes of it, the political side of it, all really good. So there's good stuff in there, but there's also, you know, the bad stuff in there is real bad. But enough about that. Let's move on to our next contender. We have Dressrosa, the saga that is. This is comprising all of Punk Hazard and Dressrosa. Punk Hazard is a pretty cool wacky adventure. I like the reintroduction to Trafalgar Law before we know, like, whether or not we can trust him or not. We just know that he's become a warlord now. And in most of our experience with warlords has been not good. So we're like, oh, are we gonna have to fight this guy? We saw how crazy his power was back in Chabondi. Caesar Clown is very annoying as a villain when he first shows up, but I do like that he goes on to become this kind of comic relief character after the events of Punk Hazard. And then, of course, we have Dressrosa itself. We have the alliance between the Straw Hat Pirates and the Heart Pirates, the plan to take down Kaido by disrupting Doflamingo's trade business. Dressrosa, one of my favourite arcs, one of my favourite sagas in the whole show, so that is definitely going high up. I think it's going to go above Alabasta. I loved Dressrosa. I loved Doflamingo. I loved, like, he got introduced so early on, and we had this, like, steady build-up, knowing that he's going to be a main antagonist later on. Just alone, his power is a very intimidating one to go up against. There's another terrifying ability on Dressrosa, which is Sugar's power, which is sort of two powers in one. She can not only turn you into a living toy, but also when she does that, everyone you've ever interacted with forgets you as if you never existed. That's an absolutely terrifying power. Man, Dressrosa is great. We have the reintroduction of Sabo, we have the tournament introducing a lot of characters who go on to form the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, like Hyrodin and Bartolomeo. Oh, Bartolomeo, he's just great. I like that Doflamingo he's one of the smartest villains that Luffy goes up against, as well as one of the most, like, physically strong. He's got the drip, he's got the charisma, he's got the hateability factor. We find out all the horrible things he's done, how he ties into Law's backstory. Law's backstory on its own, that is just wow. Luffy and Law fighting Doffy at the end. The reveal of Awakening, and of course, the reveal of Gear Forth. What a tease, having that be at the very end of an episode, having the to be continued title screen. I can only imagine what that was like watching it week to week. The only thing that sort of is a negative mark on Dressrosa is the pacing of it, and I do believe this is specifically a problem with the Toei animation pacing, rather than how it was paced in the manga. Toei definitely did drag this out quite a lot. Something that really frustrated me in Dressrosa is when Usopp, like, started running away. It frustrated me because it was basically beat for beat what happened in Arlong Park, and he already had that moment. You know, he had that moment where he ran away and then thought about how hard everyone else was fighting and resolved to turn back and rejoin the fight. So it was very frustrating to see him essentially go through the exact same thing. However, it does culminate in one of the funniest and best moments in One Piece, which is him becoming God Usopp. Him taking out Sugar and seeing all of the different people who had been turned into toys turn back into themselves and have all of their loved ones regain their memories of them and just, like, shatter Doflamingo's whole illusion and just in one fell swoop. That was incredibly satisfying and definitely a goated moment, if you will. Dressrosa is awesome. Basically, is the upshot of that. Is it S tier? I don't know if it is. What I do know is I'm gonna move these guys along a space because I've seen what's coming next, and it is Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island is great. The main reason Whole Cake Island is great is because of Sanji's backstory. This serves as something of a redemption for Sanji after the Fishman Island incident. Big Mom certainly delivers on the threat she is built up to be. This is our first interaction with an actual Yonko. And I really like that they don't actually defeat Big Mom in this arc. You can't build up the four emperors to be these, like, these like ceiling power individuals and then have them be defeated in just one arc. So I do appreciate that they didn't actually defeat Big Mom in Whole Cake. Sanji's backstory, oh my god. Sanji's backstory is devastating. And it calls into light so much about his character, like, previously that we've seen in the show. In particular, in Water 7, when he is the one who hones in on the way that Usopp is feeling. He's the one who stops the initial argument between Usopp and Luffy. He's the one who gives Usopp the words he needs. The whole, I'm gonna go and do what you can't do, you go and do what I can't do, because he recognizes that Usopp is seeing the weaknesses in himself and he's got this self-doubt, which is a reflection of self-doubt that Sanji himself has as a byproduct of the way he was raised. Speaking of hateable characters, talking about Absalom earlier and Judge as well, and Sanji's brothers are just detestable in this arc, and the whole situation. A lot of drama, a lot of devastation, and you know, when there's devastation on the table, I'm gonna put it in a higher column. I want to be emotionally totally devastated at some point in each arc. That's my favorite thing about Whole Cake Island is the Sanji situation. We have more Jinbei coming up and standing up to Big Mom and being like, hey, I'm off. The whole crashing the wedding ceremony, a million Luffy's jumping out of the cake, and then the tomato box blowing up. All that is great stuff. The chase at the end, just trying to get away from Big Mom after she's gone into her hunger pangs rage. I mean, Pedro versus Perospero. Pedro's sacrifice, devastating. Brook just cleaning up. There's some fantastic stuff in there. There's also Luffy versus Katakuri. For a lot of people, one of the best fights in all of One Piece. I think I'm in the minority. I didn't like that fight as much as some of the others. I don't know if it's just because of the way that Toei did it or if it was like this in the manga as well, but it felt very much like a lot of episodes were bookended by Katakuri being like, you're too weak, Mugiwara, you can't defeat me, and Luffy being like, oh yeah, but I'm gonna defeat you and I'm gonna be king of the pirates, and then they do a bit of punching and then we cut to something else entirely for the entire rest of the episode, and then the episode ends with another little bit of Luffy and Katakuri, and it's just the same. I told you, you're too weak, you can't defeat me. Oh yeah? But I'm gonna defeat you now. To be continued. I feel like there's about like 20 episodes that are bookended like that. That being said, I didn't dislike the fight. The Mirror Dimension is a very cool set piece that they have the fight in. I enjoyed the reveal greatly of, you know, what's under Katakuri's scarf and the fact that he's not this perfect guy at all, but he's got this like reputation around him that he can't break, and so he has to build a hut to eat donuts in. There's some good stuff. There's really good stuff. The scene where Luffy breaks the mirror to make sure that he can't get back onto the Sunny because he knows that Katakuri is one of the main threats. There's a lot of good stuff on Whole Cake. So that's what bumps it up to 80, yeah. Wano is really good. I don't want my list to be too top heavy. Actually, I'm wondering if I want to put Thriller Bark down in C tier as well. East Blue is going to bump along Dressrosa top of B tier, and then Wano in A tier. That's what I'm thinking. Wano, what a build-up we had to Wano. By far one of the longest arcs of the series so far. The previous two arcs as well, we've had the Straw Hats at half strength, with half of them going ahead to Zao and the rest dealing with Dressrosa, and then on Whole Cake, basically half going to rescue Sanji, and the others going ahead to Wano. Wano is the first time in a long time that the entire crew has been together. Zao, I didn't even mention Zao and the Reverie, which is technically part of the Whole Cake saga. Reverie's a weird one because we kind of only get like half of the arc and we get the second half in Egghead, which I'll be talking about in a moment. And then Zao's pretty cool. Zao's very cool actually. I like the introduction of the Minx, Master Cat Viper, what a guy, what a character design that is. But there's a lot to like in Wano. You know, we have the build up to Kaido, he's an Emperor of the Sea, we've been going after him for ages now. We know that he's basically the strongest guy on Earth. We see that he's like poisoning this country. People are getting so hungry that they're drinking poisoned water. There's all this pollution going on. Great job of like making us really hate Kaido from the get-go. Orochi too, just horrible guy. In particular, what he does with the smile fruits. The assembling of the Yakuza 9, their stories, their interactions, that's just all good stuff. There's a lot going on in Wano. It's quite hard to just sort of like condense it. There's the 3 acts of Wano. We've got the opening act, and then we've got Luffy in prison, and then we've got the raid on Onigashima. Of those 3, the first and the third act are a lot stronger than the middle act, I think. Luffy in prison isn't as compelling as the rest of it. The only thing is the reintroduction of Eustace Kid is pretty good. And then eventually seeing the worst generation versus Kaido and Big Mom on the rooftop, great stuff. The image that I've got here, all the Straw Hats assembled together at Onigashima, really great moment. A lot of very satisfying moments on Wano. Again, I like how big it was. It really was like a war going down in Wano with all the different factions, with Marco showing up and then the Big Mom pirates also turning up to try and get Luffy for blowing up their island. The only downside to Wano is I think another instance of it being a pacing issue. Just because there's so much going on, we just get little glimpses of what's going on with each different fight, and it makes it feel like it's taking a lot longer than it actually is, or than it actually would be in universe. Because we've got now a full 10-member Straw Hat crew, and we've got all of their allies. We've got the Yakuza 9, we've got Hyogoro and those guys, Chopper trying to cook up a medicine, we've got Queen versus Sanji, we've got King versus Zoro, we've got the rooftop situation. There's so many different little fights, and we've got Carrot and Wanda versus Prospero. There's a bit of whiplash going on Wano, which I think is like a mark against it. That said, really solid arc, really enjoyable, particularly when we actually get to the raid. I was so like ready for all of that to go down. A lot of big fist bump moments going on Wano. And of course the reveal of Gear 5th, or Gear 5, however you want to say it. Luffy using the power of just like pure cartoon logic to defeat Kaido. The build up to that was very intense and insane. Gear 5 was a great moment, a great sort of cap to have on the Wano arc. Okay, Egghead. Let's talk about Egghead now. This is another weird one to rank for a couple reasons. This is the most recent arc to wrap up everything, so there's you've got to take into account there might be some recency bias with this one. In addition, now I don't know if this is just because I watched like half of it and then I read the second half of it, but it feels a little disjointed to me because we don't just have the events that are going on Egghead Island. We've also got the second half of the Reverie, we've got what's going on Pirate Island with Kobe, we've got a few different places that we're sort of jumping around, so it feels hard to rank on that front. But we do get some really good stuff, particularly in the second half of Egghead, which has not been animated yet. But boy, I'm looking forward to seeing that. The island itself, pretty wacky, like the future technology, the food replicator. I mean, that's a dream come true, isn't it? The reveal of Vegapunk was unexpected and strange, which is part of the course with One Piece. Very, very nice to actually meet Vegapunk after he gets name dropped all the way back in Water 7. Spandan just casually drops, oh no, this isn't an elephant that ate a fruit and became a sword. This is a sword that ate a fruit and became an elephant. Sorry, what? Can you elaborate on that? No. Listen, it's all Vegapunk did it. You'll find out about him a million episodes later. I like the whole like satellite thing with Vegapunk. That's a really interesting facet of the island. Like, we get a lot of big lore, not Trafalgar lore, but we get a lot of lore drops, big things happening in the world in Egghead, in particular the second half of Reverie, and we find out what actually happened with Sabo and Cobra. We catch up with Vivi and, of all people, Wapol again. The second half of Reverie, my god, the destruction of Lelouchia, that is an incredible moment and just reinforces how sinister and powerful the world government actually are. And speaking of the world government and the Five Elders, boy do they turn up. Getting to see exactly what they are and what they can do is very good. Oh, we have the return of CP9 as well, haven't even touched on that. Luffy v Lucci round 2, that's a really fun moment. And of course we've got the situation with Jewelry Bonnie and Kuma. My god, heartbreaking stuff. And you know that I'm here to have my heart broken over and over and over again. But I think my favourite part of Egghead Island, at least right now, it's gotta be Vegapunk's death message. What a G move, having that like ready to go as soon as he dies, just going underneath the world government's radar as his kind of recompense for working under them. I like the remorse that he feels for the stuff that he did while he was part of the world government, creating these weapons, the pacifistas, maybe turning a blind eye to some of the stuff they were doing in the name of the progression of science. I like that he feels remorse and he's trying to make up for it, dropping all these big secrets that the world government have been trying to hide about the Void Century and about Joy Boy, about all of it. What a wonderful, satisfying moment. They think they're going to stop the broadcast and then they don't get it. And the Oda being the sneaky man he is, having that moment where he's about to say something about the family of D and then it cuts out for a bit and then it only cuts back on a little bit later. The reveal that the whole world is sinking, that's pretty big news. I know a certain bird who's getting a kick out of that. That's obviously got to come back, I think, in a big way. Kuma and Bonnie's backstory, wow. Definitely makes Jay Garcia Satin one of my most hated characters, and again, very satisfying to see at the end of the arc, Imu just being like, nah mate, you fucked up. You're getting melted now. So Vegapunk's message being just one final middle finger to the world government, incredibly satisfying. Of course, the giants coming in at the end to get him away from the island. As the Buster Calls going on, and we've got Kizaru comes back, and there's the whole rematch with Kizaru. Both Luffy and Bonnie doing Gear 5. There's some great stuff going on. In fact, there's not really much that I didn't like in Egghead. Just, I suppose that not a lot of the individual crew members get much time to shine. A lot of people I know thought that this was going to be like a big Frankie arc, considering he spent the time skip in Vegapunk's lab and he's got all of the Vegapunkiness to his body. So Egghead is very good. Is it as good as the three I've put in A? That is the question. In fact, fact, it maybe even goes to the top of B. Let me just move these guys down. Is Dressrosa too far down? I'm trying to think now. This is obviously the point in the tier list where I doubt everything. I've not ended up using my E tier. I think while I have my issues with Fishman Island, I don't think it needs to be any lower than D. That E tier is really only there for the Markiplier meme. Skypiea and Thriller Bark, and then yeah, East Blue, really good stuff. Then Dressrosa, then Egg. Dressrosa feels like it's too far down, but I don't know. Would I put Dressrosa above Wano? Would I put Dressrosa above Wano? No, hang on. I'm not gonna put Dressrosa above Wano, but I am gonna put it in the same tier. Or am I? No, actually, I'm gonna put it top of B tier, which is tantamount to the same thing as bottom of A tier, really, when you break it down. Okay, I think we could be here all day if I just went around and kept talking through these. But I think for now I'm gonna stop and just say, here, this is it. This is where I land on the various sagas of One Piece. Elbaf, TBC. And that's what we got. This is my ranking and general thoughts on the One Piece sagas that we've got so far. So thank you for watching this video if you made it this far. Thank you again if you're one of the many people who have said some very nice things on my previous One Piece video. Let me know your thoughts on all these sagas in the comments below, how different your rankings are. Let me know how you would put all of these, how you'd arrange them. If you'd be so kind, I wouldn't mind a little like on the video, and if you've not already, I would certainly not mind if you wanted to subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and as always, I will see you in my next one.